What do you think? When's the last time you've really come off stage and you felt like I might have messed up? Like I might have like not just tonight, but like in general, the time that I
In
put in I might have made a mistake here.
This could have been a tactical error,
Yeah.
not just in comedy, but in life, where you're like,
In life, right.
yeah.
Where you look
I
at
mean,
your years and you're like, geez, probably could have had a couple dogs, like
I like that. That's where you go. You're like, not even a family, just like some good dogs,
yeah, some good
And
dog years, man.
yeah,
Yeah.
probably could have a 2-bedroom to myself in the Midwest at
Right.
this point.
Yeah.
Um, on some level, I have those even if it's not a bomb. You ever have those where you just get off stage and you're like, it was infuriatingly fine,
Yes.
Where, yeah,
Which is
those are the
worse, I
ones.
think. I think that's worse.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, because you don't get a good story out of it. You just get that sort of weight on your psyche, which is like,
Yeah.
not only was it just fine, but like, do I even like it? Am I okay
Right.
at it? Yeah. So those, whew, yeah.
That's sad because at least like you said with a bomb, maybe you have a story, or at least you can go, well, we really burned down the house. It's like I didn't do well, but they're gonna remember me on some level for what I just did.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
when you're just average, it's
Mhm.
like you said, like, am I having fun? Because what that would be was not fun. Like that was, and it doesn't feel like this is fun. Uh,
Yeah. You're
that's
like
that's a brutal moment.
the comedy equivalent of like bad breadsticks at a restaurant.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's great because people are gonna eat them. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But no one's talking about it. No
Yeah.
one's like, we should go back for the breadsticks. They were fine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's I feel like I had a couple of those this weekend.
Yeah.
If we're talking about those.
Yeah. What do you do to how does it start and how does that end? That sort of journey that you fall into, that little cycle that you might fall into.
Oh, I think just a horrible tumult. I
Hmm.
just kind of live with it until the next one, and I mean, it's awful. It is,
Right.
yeah. It's the same thing as like being depressed. It's not that you had a bad day; it's that you had 4 fine ones, and you're like, this is it. This is just all there is. I don't know.
Yeah.
God, man, I know this podcast is supposed to be fun, and I am really
No,
coming
no.
in.
The best
I'm
part
so
is that you
sorry.
said the best part is that you said It's like I do know, but the people hopefully on the other end don't.
Yeah, yeah. You
Uh,
guys know, listeners, we're all
yeah. That'd be
yeah.
fun if that was just it. It was like I do know. And that has been our guest for this week. Yeah. I do know.
Okay. To go into detail, the fallout is I am filled with self-doubt. You
Hmm.
know, I think, yeah, it is. It's not that I don't know if I'm good. It's that I don't know if I enjoy it. Yeah, and then that leads to the existential crisis of really what am I doing?
Yeah. That is very frightening. I've had that before where, you know, there are sometimes you go, am I even good at this? But it's like if you've been doing it for this long, you have to be good at it,
Yeah,
because
yeah,
you wouldn't do it. And if you weren't good at it, like somebody would have told you, you would have found out. And
yeah,
so you kind of, I think deep down know, well, that was a bad show. I am still good at this. I have some evidence to look at. But the idea that am I not enjoying this anymore is so just shaking to the core where you're like, wow, this was not on the vision board.
yeah, yeah. This is the part of comedy that it felt like a job the whole time I was up there. It
Yeah.
felt very, very much like work. So
Yeah.
yeah.
That's horrible. Do you what do you do to get yourself out of it? Do you just, is it time? Is there anything that you do to sort of get yourself away from that?
Time, I think I've gotten better at it just with like therapy and meditate. You know, it's like I think the further in you get to comedy, it's like the the more it seems to me as important as doing good comedy is also like doing all the work to take care of yourself mentally, because it's just such a fucking battering ram of,
Right.
you know, rejection and disappointment sometimes. So you just have to, I don't know, I like therapy, I like meditating, all of that, giving myself space away from it when I need it. And yeah, just kind of sitting with it. Yeah.
Are you a like drinker before or after a show? Do you have a couple drinks, or are you pretty much just stay away from it?
The most I'll do is a
Yeah.
drink, and only because I never get drunk really before a show, but I always notice that if I have one, like two drinks, my speech goes. I will always slur one thing. I don't even
Yeah.
feel drunk, but I'm just like, fuck, that's it, you know?
Yeah.
And
When you started, were you like, I don't know. I feel like there were two sides where some people, when they started up talk to you, they were just getting hammered and going up because that was the only way they could feel, you know, comfortable and loose to try this. And then other people just never indulged, you know. What were you, either one of those?
I was the latter. Yeah, I've been drunk on stage, but it's rare. I could probably count it on one hand.
Yeah.
And yeah, I never wanted to, I just didn't trust myself enough to be funny when I
Right.
was, I don't know, drunk.
Yeah, because it's not about just even being funny. It's about being somewhat precise, you know, precisely funny. And your ability to be exact and to be present really leaves when you're drunk, you know.
Yeah, yeah. And I'm there to be funny on purpose, you know?
Yeah,
Uh,
exactly, right. Yeah,
yeah.
you make a really good point about, and the reason I asked about like drinking and stuff is, you know, you made a good point about how it's just the more you get into this, the more work you have to put in into yourself outside of this business. Because like I know, if very rarely did I drink before a show, and you know, if I had a long weekend, I would never really, if I was going to drink, it was going to be the last night, that kind of thing. But you realize, like when you have a day that you're hungover before a show, just in life in general, like how much energy it takes out of you and how much energy you have to put into this work, into this business. Like you really can't afford to lose a day, you know,
No,
to
no.
recover.
Yeah, especially not that day in like the middle of like you said, like a full weekend. You
Mm-hmm.
know, if you're going Thursday through Saturday, Thursday through Sunday, and you lose your Friday and possibly your Saturday, depending on how hard you're going, you're like, I don't know if I got anything done this weekend. I hope the sets were good because the time surrounding it was a horrible blur.
Yeah,
And
right.
yeah, and it just seems like a waste. Yeah.
Yeah, it's so wild to see like it, and I see it myself and I see it amongst other comics, how serious comics get about taking care of themselves. You know, like where when I started, and maybe you felt this way too, it just sort of seemed like a party, you know, like because when you first get into comedy, all you're seeing is bar mics and bar shows and people drinking, people at festivals partying, and it's like this is just nonstop, you know.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and
Yeah.
and that has to change, I guess.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely it has to change
Yeah.
because the people, you know, I would never name names, but you do meet people where it's like, oh, you're just gonna stay in this mode for the rest of your life, you know?
Yeah, right.
Uh,
Yeah.
be them like out and out alcoholics or just people who never really get it together on a personal level, and it's very sad, you know. I feel
Yeah.
sorry for them. You know?
You feel sorry, and it's also like it really is clear that they might be in this for different reasons, like it might not be to make it, it might be to almost like, can I just be in a group, can I just be in somewhere where people are like happy to see me,
Yeah, yeah. It's kind of the equivalent of like my parents. I feel like that's why they went to church, where they're just like, yeah,
Yeah,
this is my thing. This
right.
is everybody I know, that's like some guy's equivalent, where they're like, yeah, these are my people. I just do this.
Yeah, the community aspect, which is great, but it's like they're also, you want to keep progressing. You don't want to
Yes.
be the same guy or girl at every bar show, for that same person forever,
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. And also that community, especially with comedy, is constantly changing. People
Right.
are in and out, and
Yeah.
that in itself can be taxing. So.
And the classes, I guess you could say, like are always shifting too. I feel like where you're at a show and the next thing you're like, who's that? And they're like, oh, this person just got this. And then you watch them, like, oh, geez, they're great. And then somebody gets bumped down, and it's like, it's wild. There's so much shifting inside of the community where
Mhm.
I feel like you're always like hyper aware of what everybody is doing, you know?
Yes. Yeah. And that you can be driven mad by that,
Yeah.
because I do think there is like people want to think that like to some extent comedy is like waiting in a line. Like if you're doing the work, you're like, I show up, I work hard every day, I am getting better, and at some point I'm going to be at the front of the line. And it's like maybe not, like
Right.
there's no one-to-one ratio of like I did this, I'll get this. People jump around, and that's just how
Yeah.
it goes.
People really jump around, and it is crazy because like I always thought, like, wouldn't that be great, like if that's how it was, though, where you almost, I feel like comics just want to know what they're supposed to do, and they'll do it. They'll do almost anything you ask of them. And it's like,
Mm-hmm.
all right, show up outside of the cellar at 2 o'clock. There'll be a line, you'll take a number, we will be going in this order, to come in and audition. And it's like, you wish that I tell me, is there an essay I have to write? I will write the essay, whatever it
Yeah.
is. It like a contest, like just give me something concrete. And
Yeah.
there's nothing concrete, it's
No,
all
no, no. There's no
abstract.
no instruction manual. No, because there's so many different ways. You know what I mean?
Right.
That's the
Right.
the
Yeah.
perennial question is like, how did you do that? How did you get that? And it's like
Right.
nobody has the same answer, right?
No.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's wild. Those early years of seeing like other comics are so formative too, and like the things that you end up doing that you're like, man, I can't believe I did that. Like, do you have shows from those first couple of years where you're just, I mean, the feeling where you're just dying to get on stage, so you say yes to things that 5 years later you go, what was I thinking, like, to
Yeah.
do a show here for this person or in this event or this much time? Do you have any that sort of come to your mind from those first couple years?
The one that I like, I mean, there's like a plethora of bad shows, but one that I just remember just hearing the description, I was like, oh, I should have said no,
Mm-hmm.
because it was I was in New York, and it was like in like New Brunswick, New Jersey. It was far.
Yeah.
Uh, we all carpooled there, and the person that was putting on the show, she was like, "Oh, it's a guy. It's his 50th birthday party. They like comedy." And I was like, "Really? They're like fans?" And she was like, "Yeah, they like it." And it's like,
I
okay,
mean,
all
they've
right,
heard it,
that's not.
yeah.
Yeah. They're like, people like to laugh,
Yeah.
It's no. And then it really was like just the worst scenario. It was like people, you ever show up to do comedy and it's like a room full of people already having a good time. So it's
Yes.
like, yeah, you don't need this. If we do comedy right now, it's just going to be a screeching halt to an already good time.
Right.
And And I just wish, and it really was. It was like a New Brunswick nice like row house that we walked into, and it just ruined a party, stopped a party. This guy had a band that he was playing with. The Birthday Boy was playing a concert in their front living room. Just a bunch of old like dad rockers and their wives
Sounds
just
awesome.
jamming out. Yeah,
Sounds,
yeah. And they're having a good time, and we just stand and wait in the kitchen for like 20 minutes for them to finish, and then go up, and just every single thing that was said, they almost worse, it was enjoyed in silence. Just a lot of like, when they give you polite head nods and tiny little titters, just chuckles
right.
to themselves, and you're like, this is going to be it the whole time. And then halfway through my set, the drummer for the band, I got the classic "You suck" from this guy. I don't even think he hated me. I think he was just trying to be funny. And I was just like, I mean, it's been silent the whole time, so that really does just ruin everything. And I proceeded to bomb for the rest of the time.
And then after that, you're still in this person's house.
100%.
So you can't even like, there's not like a green room that you can even escape to.
No green room. We just all had to be like, well, happy birthday, man. And we got like a bunch of like, what you guys do, it's brave. All right. You guys are so, and you're like, yes, that's what I got into this for. So people could recognize my bravery. That's the biggest one where if I could go back, I'd be like, no, immediately no, just from the description alone. Yeah.
Because I can't imagine at that time in your career also, you were like, I'll do it for this amount of money. You're like, oh, if you're going to pay us? Yeah. Let's go.
Yeah. I got to that point in my career shamefully late. I will tell you, so late, where I had to have another comic be like, I'm like, oh, I'm going to do this like weekend somewhere, and they were like, what are they paying you? And I was like, I don't know, I'm pretty excited to find out. And my friend had to be like, hey, you're a fucking idiot. You need to know this now. And it just never occurs to you until somebody's like, you are trying to do this for a career, right? You need to know.
Right. Well, I think that comes from like not wanting to upset whoever has asked you to like do comedy, where you're like, well, they asked. I mean, I've been trying to get in here forever, or this will be the last time. I'm not gonna make this mistake again. And then you play that same club 4 years in a row. You're like, this. I'm sure next year it'll be different.
Yeah, exactly. And that is the biggest thing, because it's hard to get out of that mindset of like, I'd do anything to do these shows in this spot. Right. And then, the idea of any sort of booker hitting them up and being like, okay, well, yes, I'll do it, but I need to know what you're going to pay me first. Right. You're like, who has the balls to do that?
Dude, I'll never forget. There was a booker in Pittsburgh when I lived there who would text you. He would send like mass text out to like comics, like almost through like a service. And then he would just say like, are you free April 30th, 7 p.m.? And so he's already putting you into the corner to say, yes, I'm free, or no, you don't know what the details are. He gives you nothing. You just know that you're going to be able to perform. So often you would say like, yes, I'm free. And he would go, here's the show. Here's the time. Interested? Still no mention. So it's like he knows I'm going to get someone to just say yes before I tell them what's really going on, And it was like, I remember like me and my friends that were comics was just like, yeah, I guess I'm doing this now. Like I'm doing this tonight,
Yeah. And then he fills in the sordid details where you're like, are you free? It's here. You're like, yes. And he's like, great. It's for a pack of wolves, literal wolves. They are hungry. They don't speak. They're animals, literally. And then you're like, right. Great. Yeah, man. It's like when a friend will like be like, "You free on this date?" And you're like, "Sure, love to hang out." And they're like, "Yeah, I need help moving." And you're like, "Fuck off."
Yeah. You know what? I just picked something up. You know, like
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
is just be upfront, you know, just
Mhm.
be blatantly honest about what you're offering, because if I'm free, I'm probably going to take it anyway. You know,
Sure. Yeah.
I just want
And
to
if you,
know.
yeah, and you'll find somebody. It's just you might not get the level of comedian that you want, but
Yeah.
that's as it
Yeah.
should be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you have any shows that still, to me, I have a couple where like anytime I get a little bit too like I'm getting pretty good at this, I sort of think back and I'm like, well, don't forget about that show or that night. Do you have anything that sort of like just sits in the back of your head of like, just stay humble, you know, don't forget you did bomb in front of your family that night or whatever it is.
Uh, more than a few.
Yeah.
I don't like to dwell on this one too much, but I got to do Montreal in
Yeah.
just for laughs in like 2014, and really ate it up there pretty bad. And I was in a good spot coming into it. I was in that mode where I was like, look at me, I'm here. I had been like having like really good sets around the city before I went up, and just bombed pretty much the whole time of a 7-minute set to a half full auditorium of French Canadians, and all industry in the back, So
Yeah,
I was
right.
like, just it truly was one of those sets where I felt like I saw a couple dreams fade before my eyes, and I was like,
Yeah, right.
fuck
Yeah.
me. Um, yeah, it was brutal. So bad. I remember like going out, my first joke hits barely at all. And that was the first time I had any big set that where I was like, this is a big deal, it's important. And as soon as that happened, I just like deer in headlights it, where I was like, oh no, this is, and I stumbled, I fucked a joke up towards the end. And I just remember finishing my last bit to like a smattering of pity laughs.
Mm-hmm.
And then I was like, oh, okay. And just proceeded to freak out for the rest of the night in
Right.
Montreal, Quebec. So,
Right.
yeah.
That is
Yeah.
so, I mean, I think any comic that has been working more than 5 years has a relatable thing of like, you, like, this is it. This is my opportunity to do something. And
Mhm.
that feeling of like that doesn't go away for a while. You know, that like, did I just blow the one chance I'm gonna get? You know.
Yeah.
But
It does not. Yeah.
yeah, but what's, I think, important is that like it's all relative. I mean, that's obviously a huge opportunity, but you know yourself, I'm sure, that like it doesn't, it seems like life or death in that moment, and probably for a little while after, and then a year or 2 years or 5 years go by and you go, so those Montreal didn't go well, you know. It's like, it's not, you know,
Yeah. Yeah.
you
Yeah.
still remember it, but it, you know, I think everybody has that, you know,
Sure.
everybody has blown what they thought was going to be the
The
one.
one thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
That's for sure. And I've talked to so many comics about it who had like, because that's actually not that rare for that too.
Yeah.
Where
Yeah,
it's
that's
like, yeah, I
not
got to.
there. A lot of people do that. Like, they're usually not filled rooms,
Mhm.
and sometimes they're odd show times, and it's just awkward, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's the fallout from it is actually good. As I was talking to somebody else, and he was just like, "Yeah, I remember that happened to me, and it sucked so bad." But then that leads you to like, I just remember the next year to 2 years being like really productive for me, at least in terms of like developing jokes and my act, because it was just like I have to do better now, and
Right.
it leads to good stuff.
Yeah. But man, being out of town is a hard one too, where you can't even go home. You know,
Yeah, yeah,
you
yeah.
have those. I mean, that's a real that's a stinger right there.
Mhm.
But like when you're on the road or something and the shows aren't going on, you're like, man, I'm in a hotel. Like I can't even
Yeah,
go back to my house after this.
yeah,
You know, I'm
yes.
just
That
sitting.
actually, yeah, it's absolutely the worst part of it. And you just have to, you can only call people, you know? You
Right,
can't,
right.
yeah,
Do you
yeah.
do like do you call the same people every time?
100%. One of my best friends in comedy is a guy named Alex Stone. If
Mm.
it's real bad, I'll call him. Yeah, a couple people. I'm past the point, thankfully, where when I first started out, if I had them bad enough, I would call my mom. You know?
Really?
Yeah, and just be
Wow.
like, I'd be like, do you think I'm like dumb? Do you think I'm worth, you know, all the questions that you would ask, be
Yeah.
vulnerable enough to ask your mom. And thankfully, at some point, she just got, maybe she was old enough or I was like far enough along in comedy where I'd try to explain the situation to her of like why a certain set mattered. And she'd be like, oh, okay. You know, like it was clear that she just wasn't grasping it. And I was like, I can't, this doesn't do anything anymore, you know?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I have that difficulty calling anyone that isn't a comic because they're like, you know, the show stunk. Well, why did it stink? You know, we're seated weird or the lights. Well, how did you do?
Yeah.
It's like I did fine. Well, it sounds like you did fine. You know, it's like no, but it's like you can't. And then now you're just reliving. You're trying to like really explain why it was bad, and you're getting frustrated again. Where it's like, all right, well now I'm just mad at you that you don't know. You know,
Yeah.
like
Yeah. That's even in I think the only person who's not a comic that you can get to be in that scenario is maybe a therapist, and
mm-hmm.
that is truly like a credit to a therapist who's just like, well, I'm professionally listening to you right now, so
Right, yeah.
I will figure out what you are telling me. Yeah, because if you're not in the world, then you just don't understand the depths of what's going on. Yeah.
Yeah. I've
The
had,
other
I don't
thing.
know. Go ahead,
Oh, go ahead.
please.
Oh, I was just going to say the other thing about that Montreal thing too was it was the kind of it was unique because I was away from home, but it's a festival, so there are a lot of comics there that I was friends with, and it was that bomb where you just have everybody checking on you. Like
Oh,
I just went to like hide in another room, and I had so many people like at different times come up and like put their hand on my shoulder right away, and it was just like, oh God, this is, because it's like it's at least close to as bad as you thought it was if everybody is like, hey, you're okay, it's gonna be fine, you know?
yeah, right.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
there's always like that moment where you're like, I actually wish you weren't here. You know, like I know you're trying to be nice, but also you have to get away from me. Like
Yeah.
this is making it worse.
Mm.
You ever get the like where you think the set is good and then you have someone come up to you and go be like, hey, you know, I mean, it's just a weird night. And you're like, I thought it was pretty good until right now. Like what?
Yeah,
Weird
yeah.
for who?
And you're,
You know?
yeah. So weird for you? I felt good.
Yeah,
I'm
right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, like,
I've
oh, did
had
you? Yeah.
I I like that always makes me laugh because I do have friends that would like do that to fuck with you, you know? Where they're like, "Hey
Yeah.
man, it's okay." And then you're like, "Well, you're a piece of shit." And
Yeah,
then you just
right.
laugh it
Yeah.
off.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That moment of when you're calling the people, I have probably like 3 to 5 people that I just start dialing like as soon as I'm back to the room. And
Mhm.
as like whatever for whatever reason, they're either working or you know, they're busy, they don't pick up and you're like getting down the list, you're like, all right, we have one more shot at this, you know, to get someone to answer, you know. And if this
Yeah.
doesn't work, we are about to enter a whole world of darkness. You know, like,
Yeah.
you know, you're just like, please, please. But
Yeah.
usually if a comic is calling you at like 12:30 or 1 a.m., it's like, all right, I know what's happening here. You know,
Yeah.
no
And
one's
they're
ever
talking
calling you
off
at
a
that time to
ledge.
be like, hey, I got Fallon. right now.
Yeah, yeah.
Like, yeah,
Just murdered, and I just
yeah,
wanted to talk about it with you.
yeah, right.
Mhm.
Do
Um,
are you like after a bad show, are you like go back to your space kind of guy, or do you like to be around people? What's your thing? Are you a private guy, or you like to, social? What is it?
I'll. It depends on like the severity of it. Uh, if it's after a bad show and you're like, sometimes you're in a situation where there's like a bar outside of the club or like next door, and you end up anywhere around some of the audience and they want to talk to you, then I would rather jump into traffic than
Yeah.
be there. I'll fucking walk to a hotel if I can't get a ride or something. I would rather do anything than
Right.
be
Yeah.
around that. If
Yeah.
it's like, oh, I'm just going to like a different bar with other comics, that's fine. I
Yeah.
just don't. I just don't want to see any of the audience ever again after a bomb.
Yes. Yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, literally ever again. Like,
Yeah.
I don't want them coming back to tomorrow's show. You know.
Yeah. I don't
Yeah.
want a second chance. I
Yeah.
would just rather they finish their lives being like, well, that guy didn't have it, and that's fine. I'm
Right.
not for you.
Yeah, I'm not for you. You're obviously not for me, and we should never have this interaction again. It's okay. It's all right. There's going to be
Yeah.
more people, you know.
There is something about a giant bomb where it does feel like a failed first date with, anywhere from 50 to 500 people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Where yeah, you're like God, especially when people are like walking out after a show and you're like standing around or waiting to get paid or whatever it is, and they're having to walk past you, or you're selling merch, which
Uh,
Jesus, I mean, is that just the longest? You're like, are they just trickling people out? Is there any way to get these people out of here quicker?
mm,
Because they're looking at you just like you don't even exist. They're
mm.
just glancing
Do
over you.
you do you have a point where if you're having like a rough enough set and you were like at some point you were like, okay, I'm gonna do a pitch for merch. Do you have a point where you're like, this set is bad enough that I will never try to sell anyone in this audience anything? You're just like,
100%. 100%.
okay,
There have
yeah,
been good shows where I'm like, not tonight. Where it's just
yeah,
like I can just tell that the people, they're having fun, but I don't want they're not necessarily having fun with me. They're just sort of having fun, and I'm there to keep the ball in the air.
yeah,
And those people don't, not only do they not want to buy anything, I feel like they also are going to be real awkward when you're trying to sell stuff after. And I hate
yeah,
that. I hate that moment,
yeah,
you know.
yeah.
Do you always sling merch, or if it's bad, you'll pull
I,
the plug?
I've never had merch to sell until I put out an album during quarantine. So now I'm gonna
Yeah.
start carrying like I guess download cards with me. So that
Yeah.
is my fear, the set that is either an out and out bomb or just not good enough, and I go up there ready to sell merch and just like nope, it's not happening. So
Yeah. Because there are
yeah,
weekends where you're like, I'm gonna have to sell some stuff.
yeah, yeah,
I'm gonna need to make some, sell some albums, because I know what the plane ticket costs, to
yeah,
get here.
mm,
And God,
yeah.
that's
If I
the
don't.
worst.
Mhm.
Yeah. You're like, if I don't, I'm not coming home. I haven't bought that return ticket yet. And
Like, I gotta sell you these t-shirts, or I live in Boise now.
yeah.
And
Yeah, right. I could just imagine you like in Montreal after that, just like you're like looking at property. You're like, I might just stay. I'm
yeah, I
thinking.
I could learn French. I'll learn French.
Yeah. I always think, do you ever think about like what it would take for you to quit and how you would quit? Like the lengths you would have to go to erase comedy from your life?
Oh, I mean, I it'd be so odd.
Yeah.
I like if people didn't know, if I didn't have a proof, if I didn't have a digital record that I did comedy, people would be like, I think this guy might have like murdered his family and tried to start over.
Right.
Because I'm not on bad terms with any old friends, but I haven't hung out with college friends in close to 15 years, you know,
Right.
high school friends longer than that. So they're just like, yeah, he just disappeared out of our lives and just showed up decades later,
Right.
completely unattached, no real job skills.
Yeah.
He seems pretty sad, always kind of wistfully regretful, you know?
Yeah, where it's like I'd have to delete everything. Like all like I could never talk to another comic again, if I got
Mhm.
out of this and I couldn't see what they were doing. Yeah, I mean,
Mhm.
it would be like going into the witness protection program where you're just like name changes, no more social media,
Yeah.
address change,
Yeah.
just remove.
Yeah. And I wonder why it's like that too, because I have run into people who have stopped doing comedy and I see them on like social media. Their lives are good. They're
Mhm.
fine. But when you run into them, there's this reflex where they're like, please don't judge me harshly. And you always want to stop and be like, hey, this isn't weird. I think your life is great. I think it's fucking awesome that you just are living and you seem really happy, you know?
Yeah.
But it would be awkward to say that.
Yeah, it's awkward because like, you didn't they didn't betray you. It's like you didn't,
Yeah.
you could quit. Like I don't own this. I don't own comedy, like
Yeah.
it's
Uh-huh.
get out. I saw you were fishing a lot. That looks great. You look very
Yeah.
happy. Uh
Mhm.
God. What do you think is the like overall, I mean, you have Montreal is I can understand that being the answer to this question, but I think I would say that it isn't if you try to if you think that it is. What do you think, like start to finish, worst set, worst reaction, worst crowd, like just I have to get out of here right now, like show you've ever done?
Maybe one. I don't know if it checks all the boxes for that, but it was my earliest bomb, like hardcore.
Mm-hmm.
And it's burned into my brain because of the situation. I started at Go Bananas Comedy Club in Cincinnati. It's a really good club, and when you start out doing the open mic, it's a bringer. Like they're like, hey, bring 5 people, you can go up, and they don't stick by that. If they like you, they're like, just start showing up and we'll throw you up when you can.
Mm-hmm.
But I was working as a bar back then, so I could get all of the staff at the bars that I worked at to come out. So I would bring like 20, 30 people, and they would drink a lot and they'd have a great time. They were a good audience. And one night we're doing the open mic, and I bring that many people, and they are 95% of the audience. They are just all of my friends and coworkers. And I'm like 3 months in,
Oh
and
my God.
I bombed my dick off just hard for my friends, for the people that are like, yeah, we believe in you and we're here, and just failed so abominably. Um, and it sucked. But then the reason that I remember it was because it just wasn't a good open mic overall. Nobody did great. But the
Right.
person that went on after me was this really funny guy named Butch Wesley. And at that point during the open mic, the club owner, who's like running the sound that night, realizes that it's a bad show. So he's like just fucking around. So Butch is doing much better than I did, still not doing great. And there's a lull in his set, and the owner just plays crickets over the loudspeaker, just a little bit, just softly, but enough that everybody can hear it. And Butch is like, "Are you fucking kidding me?" Right? And he just freaks out on him. And he's like, "Sam Evans brought the whole crowd, and you could have played that through his whole set." And fucking that tore the room open and made the rest of the show better. That line. And then the only comfort I took from it was that all the comics would sit in the back on like these couches, and Butch came and he sat like one person between us. And after he sat down, he like leaned over, reached across, and he patted me on the leg, and he goes, "Hey buddy, I meant it." And it just completely took the sting out of it for me.
Yeah.
But that was like my first vividly bad, like sweating bomb where you're like,
right.
Oof.
That's a brutal one in front of people that you know, especially early on, because you're trying to convince people that you should be doing this, you know, like you should be chasing this, and they're like, really,
comedy. And almost exclusively in front of people I know. I think there were maybe 2 to 4 people in the audience that were strangers, and I remember being like, God, I wish I didn't know. I wish you were strangers. It makes it easier, you know. But
because then you have to go to work with these people. Like that doesn't. You're not just done, you know, seeing these people that you know. You know, you then see them tomorrow, maybe. You know. That's oh my God, that is just. I remember bringing my friend and a girl I was dating at the time to an open mic when I first started, which is like, I don't know. Yeah, we're so dumb. We're just so dumb when we first start. We're like, yeah, come see me do comedy. You know, it's like I was wearing shorts. You know, I was wearing shorts and slip-on shoes, dude. No socks. I mean, I looked like I was selling wakeboards, and I got up at like, you know, we get there at like 9, and I didn't go on stage for like 1, and they sat there the whole time, and I did 3 minutes to nobody, and them, and they just after like just looking at me like, what? Like, are you insane? Like, are you crazy? You know?
Did you ever do like? I remember I was dating a girl. I had met her older brother, and a couple times we were like getting chummy, and I like wrote a joke about him. And the first time he came to see me do comedy, I was like, I'm gonna do that joke and murder with it. And he was right at front row, and I did the joke about him. Ate shit, and I just had to be like, well, okay, you know. Just confidently thinking that I would, not only would everybody laugh, but that I would make his night, you know? And, nothing.
Oh my God. Before we get out of here, one thing I want to ask is what's you call people, we know that you call people, you like to get away from the audience. Is there any sort of comfort thing that you do to comfort yourself after a bad show? Food or like movie, anything like that you're like, I gotta go to this place, I gotta see this thing, you know?
Food is the biggest one. There's no particular. It's just I'm probably gonna have a good greasy meal, and I'm probably gonna have a sweet treat. You know, I'm really going to. Yeah, I should pray for good sets, because bad sets are truly awful for my health. You know.
Right.
It's just binge eating for me, because I don't like to get drunk. Really, I'm not a huge drinker. It's that every time.
Do you bring it back to the place you're staying, or if you're on the road, or do you go and sit somewhere and like eat? What's your, are you just like get back to the hotel styrofoam container kind of guy?
More often than not, it's back to the hotel or back to wherever I'm staying, because going to sit somewhere to eat, that's like a special loneliness, unless you're with another comic that you like.
Yeah.
Because that'll take the sting off, right? But if you're with like strangers, somebody that you don't know, or you're not vibing with whoever you're working with, you're like, yeah, I gotta go be alone in my room. I will order in. I'll pick something up on the way, and
Yeah.
I just need to be alone with this food.
That is crazy that sometimes the comfort thing that you do is also the celebration thing that you do, where it's like sometimes after a good show you're like, I'm probably going to get some food. I'm going to get it to go. I'll go back to the hotel, and you're like, if the habits are the same, like is that good, like
Yeah. I mean, they are definitely the same a lot of the time. You are absolutely
yeah.
right. Yeah.
I
I think I'm just
remember.
more in, go ahead.
I No, go ahead, please.
I was just going to say, I think I'm more inclined to be sociable about it if
Yeah.
it's a good set, right?
Right.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah. I
yeah.
remember, like, it's just so, like, you're like, that's the reward, huh? Like, you remember, like, when you're trying to get in for the Funny Bones or whatever chain you're working, and it's like, I remember going to Columbus, auditioning. They're like, all right, start sending avails. I went back to the hotel that, of course, you're paying for. You're not, they're not
Mm-hmm.
putting you up. And I bought two Bud Lights at the hotel, like, lobby bar, and took them back to my room and sat and watched TV and drank two Bud Lights. And I was like, this is it. I have really earned these. And it's like, what? Like, what? Like, this is the behavior of a dad that just went through a divorce,
Yeah.
like,
And you're
it's
like,
crazy.
I've arrived. I've done it.
Yeah.
I'm really living. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh man. Uh you did put an album out recently. Tell people the album, where they can find it, where they can buy it.
It's available everywhere, all streaming platforms. It's called Sweet Baby Boy. And yeah, every place, Spotify, Pandora, Amazon Music. Buy it on iTunes, buy it on Amazon Music. Yeah, pick it up. Please listen to it a lot.
And where can people find you and follow you, Sam?
I'm at all of my social media is at really Sam Evans. So that's at really Sam Evans. I've been told recently that that is a douchey uh, Instagram or Twitter handle because it implies a certain it's really me. But there's just a lot of Sam Evans out there, so I just picked a simple word to go before it. And reallysamevans.com.
That's it. All right, man. Well, I can't thank you enough for doing this.
Thanks for having me, man. Had fun.
Yeah, of course.